Okay, we will reconvene the committee of the whole. Our first presentation will be the abandoned housing solution. I see we have a panel discussion and also a, I guess it's going to be another, I'm going to move out the way, period. So if you guys would like to get started, you can introduce yourselves to the board.
Yeah.
And,
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. At this time, first of all, I'd like to thank the board for their time with respect to this matter. As you know, housing has been a very tough thing here in the village over the last several years. So addressing the vacant and abandoned homes and coming up with creative ways in which we can address those was kind of a priority. With this, the mayor coming in, this was part of the strategic plan for progress that he put out. It also is spelled out that the village was going to work in collaboration with the Cook County and South Suburban Land Banks, as well as collaboration with other housing programs. This is one of those programs that we're bringing to you tonight. The comprehensive plan in the existing conditions report has spelled out an initial goal of assuring a wide diversity of quality of housing. So I passed out a copy of the existing condition reports that were found in the initial comprehensive plan. This information we've kind of gone over. If you've been at the community meetings, you've gone through this already. Some of the data here is already familiar to some of you, but I just wanted you to have a copy of that for your own edification. So, as you know, in 2017, when in May there were over 400 vacant homes, abandoned homes in the village. That number, as of recent, I think October, when we did the windshield survey, was about 375, somewhere thereabouts. So that's what we are looking at as far as the existing conditions today. Prior to 2017, there were there's no information with respect to the liens that the village filed, other than what was available through the water department, which you had to manually go and pull all of that information. And all of that is available through the Cook County Recorder's Office, because liens are public information. So although we recorded the liens, we never actually kept a database of that information. So we're trying to keep that information up and keep it current going forward. So in addition to the delinquent water accounts, we also have grass cutting liens that we will be filing. As you know, we mowed 178 properties this last year. Hopefully we will continue to do that on the vacant and abandoned homes going into 2019. There's still funds available for that, so that will continue to accrue liens on those properties. And the village will still have to maintain the vacant and abandoned homes, so we will be working on that going into 2019. At this point, I just kind of want to introduce who we have here tonight. We have Faisal Al-Khatib. Okay, I didn't want to mess that up. And then we have, he's with CRC Illinois. He's a attorney. We have Drew Wishover with Enterprise Title, and he's also a partner with Faisal. We have to his right Monica Shamas, who's an associate attorney with Drew. Then we have Cody and Monica Raymaker, who are consultants on this project as well. So without further ado, I'm going to turn this over to Faisal.
Good evening. As an attorney, they told me I don't need a microphone, but just in case, I'm going to use the microphone. My name is Mahmoud Faisal Khatib. I'm an attorney. I'm with CRC. I'm their general counsel. In the name of God, the most beneficent and the merciful, thank you so much for your time and allowing us to come and speak to you about some of the things that we're hoping that we can do with you guys here in Sauk Village. So what we did was we've got a PowerPoint presentation. I got to keep things flowing through. You have with you a copy of that PowerPoint in paper form, a short little pamphlet and brochure. We've also passed out that brochure, the trifold, to the audience behind us, so they should all each have a copy as well to give an understanding as to who CRC is, what our plan is, and what we try to do. And so we'll dive right into it. CRC is combined about 80 years of experience. We've got legal, marketing, we have real estate development, technology, community building. And our target as CRC really started in the city of Chicago. And we work closely with the Department of Building and the Department of Planning and Development. And our focus is on addressing what we call zombie properties. So zombie properties are properties that have the guts, the structure, they're physically there, but there's no brain. By that we mean the banks won't foreclose, the owners either don't want to or don't have the capacity to rehab the property or fix the property and keep it in compliance. The city doesn't know what to do with it, and so they essentially abandon the property, and they just sit there vacant. So the biggest problem that we found was trying to clean and clear title to get to a point where we can get to ownership. So our main purpose is to reverse the zombie impact on municipalities and bring life back into these properties. We've got a lot of experience in doing this. We're doing this in the city of Chicago as we speak, where the way we approach is using the municipal powers, specifically using liens and receivership powers that exist for a municipality to target these abandoned properties. So I won't bore you with my biography here, but there are three primary individuals who are in the organization. Myself, I've been an attorney. I've been doing business and various transactional work among my various careers for the last 20 years in various areas around real estate development, real estate, and receivership. Courtney Jones, who is one of the partners, he is the president of Chicago Homes Realty Group. He is also the president of the Dearborn Realtist Association. A little background on realtists. In the 40s, when realtors would not allow black real estate sales professionals to become realtors, a group of black real estate sales professionals came together and formed the Dearborn Realtist Group here in Chicago in 1941. It is a national organization, and the entire focus of the organization is on building and growing black home ownership throughout the country. We can go, I'm not going to bore you with all those additional details in terms of the disparities in home ownership between between blacks and whites and brown, but that's Courtney Jones. And Drew Wishover, who's here to my right, he is the Vice President and Treasurer and CFO of Enterprise Title Services, and a key component of trying to de-zombify these properties is clearing title. So that partnership is critical in terms of being able to, how do we clean and clear out title in order to get to the point where we can actually develop these properties and bring life back into them. So in order for this to work for us, we work with community groups, various nonprofits, municipalities, to address the issue and really convert them into affordable housing. And by affordable housing, it doesn't have to be low cost, it simply is just affordable. And the ability to do this is based on the fact that, and we'll get to that, is the acquisition cost is low enough in order to get to the point where it makes sense to actually work within the valuations within a particular community. Because that is the toughest part, especially when banks foreclose and they try to sell an REO. Their prices sometimes are so high, it's not a viable option. You can't buy the property, you can't clean the taxes, you can't, there's no viability, there's no room to actually be profitable for an investor to come in or for a homeowner to come in and spend that money. And it's almost impossible to get banks to actually lend against it because the numbers don't work in the valuations. So our approach to it is really based on two major principles. One, the super priority aspect of the municipal liens and the municipal powers. And secondly, the ability to use that super priority to knock out all the other parties that are on title that are hindering and keeping the property vacant and abandoned. So the purpose of doing this is once these properties are brought back on the tax roll, what essentially happens is we end up with home ownership. So increased home ownership, you have economic stimulus, increased tax revenue, you have additional labor force, it creates increased density results in increased retail, more commercialization within the neighborhood, within the community, and you don't end up with 1, 2, or 3 properties in a particular neighborhood that's dragging down the entire neighborhood because they're vacant and abandoned. So the way we do it is we enter into a redevelopment agreement with the municipality. And that redevelopment agreement essentially says that we are required, we take ownership of the liens, we take those liens, we foreclose on them, and the lien portfolio that Sauk has is a little bit unique in that we might have to do a few extra things just to get us to title through the foreclosure process, which we can talk about that, but it allows us to get into the point where we're actually creating some sort of stimulus in the property. So the result is we take over those liens, we foreclose. Once we've taken title post-foreclosure, we then use that property to and bring in investors as well as our own capital and financing to get construction funds to construct and rehab the property and bring it back into for eventual sale to home ownership. That is the crux of our model. So we would work on the redevelopment agreement, and that agreement would indicate once we've taken title, once we've taken assignment of the liens, we have a certain period of time in which where we need to foreclose and then rehab and develop the properties, so that way it's a timeline. It's not like this is sitting on there for a long period of time. But of course, depending on the size of the portfolio, it might take time to actually foreclose. In Cook County, in the state of Illinois, foreclosure process can be between 8 to 18 months, depending on what the issues are. So that is the gist of our entire presentation. And there's some more information in detail throughout. If you have any questions, I can take some questions, and I'm sure it's going to flush out even more about the process.
Yes, I have a few questions. When you said that you will be working, doing the legal work, you're talking about to actually acquire the land. So you'll be, is that part of the deal? Who would be paying? Is that something that has to be reimbursed to you guys, or when you get the land, or you see a land that you want, a house that you want to see, that you're interested in rehabbing? Yes, there's going to be legal ramifications. You being a lawyer know that you have to file all that. Where is that money coming from?
We pay for that.
Okay.
So the issue here, what really makes this viable, and there were several other groups that approached the city of Chicago to do the exact same thing. Unfortunately, they had 1 or 2 pieces but didn't have the entire package. The key to what makes our process work is the legal. So it's the power of our legal that we're able to actually apply that at a low enough cost where we can go in and foreclose on the lien, use that, and actually, so where it comes in is we'll take assignment, we sign a development agreement. So the agreement is whatever we agree to. Then the assignment, we'll take assignment immediately of the entire portfolio. We take those liens, and then from there we'll triage the portfolio as to which ones are going to have, I mean, so now we're approaching I call it social capitalism, right? So it has to make sense financially, otherwise it's not going to make sense for anybody. Because if the first round is all of the worst possible properties, then we're going to end up in a situation where we can't finance the rest of it. So the idea is, in bulk, the portfolio has value. So we will triage the properties that we can get to initially. We foreclose on that at our expense. We file the foreclosure, the fees, the costs, and the expenses. We take it all the way through the foreclosure process to deed. And at that point, 1 of 2 things will happen. We'll do an assessment of what the tax issues are, right? Because there are properties that, the one thing that defeats your liens and receivers' liens, because that's really where this all started, is the taxes. So that's where we'll step in and we'll use, and even that's a dispute as to whether the taxes really wipe out municipal liens. But But I'm getting too much in the weeds on that. The point is, we will then work with the land bank, okay, to clean the taxes. And at that point, the taxes have been wiped out clean after we've wiped out all of the interest in the property. We take title, we get financing, we rehab, all of that at our expense. We take over that whole process.
Okay, now, you went that far. Are you, at that point in time, looking to rent, or are you looking for someone to buy? And if so, is there a criteria?
So the criteria is really based on what our agreement is. So our position is, like for the city of Chicago, when we did our project with them, there was an 80% AMI, affordable, average median income requirement to provide affordable housing. Well, in Chicago that works, right? So because AMI in the city of Chicago, in the area, it's high enough, and the values are going to be high enough, relatively high enough, that we can support a affordability requirement. There's no requirement, right? So it's really up to each village municipality as to what they want. The city of Chicago, that was their directive and that was their objective. We complied with that. In your case, if you want that, fine. If not, then it doesn't have to be. So one of our partnerships is with the Black Coalition for Housing, and what they provide is housing counseling to homeowners to provide financial literacy, financial education, credit checks, credit repair, and how to identify and find people who are currently renting that would totally qualify for home ownership, just never knew that they could. So in order for us to answer your question first, there's no criteria unless you impose a criteria. The second question is, for us, it doesn't make sense unless we can sell these properties. And to sell these properties, we need to have a base. And to have that base, we need buyers who are qualified, ready to buy. So we work within the community to find those homeowners or those potential renters who are looking to buy in the community.
So basically, you probably will have a database of people that probably pre-qualified, which I'm pretty sure that you can, because first of all, I'm sure this is not the first time you've done it.
No, this is
Okay, so therefore you should have a base of some people that pre-qualified, that if they can find some homes that quite naturally they don't want to live there, they can take home ownership. At any rate, what's the percentage of home ownership versus rental that you fall into that you see so far with this?
On the market as to whether the buyers are at and how long we're willing to wait. In Chicago, we've got a 6-month period from the moment we list it to the moment it sells where we're allowed, or we would want to sell it. Our objective is not to retain property, right? We're not in the business of sitting on a bunch of single-family homes and renting those out. For us, that doesn't work as a business model. Our business model is acquiring properties using the lien process, and really where the majority of our acquisition cost is in the legal, right? But that's something we're absorbing, to then get to the point where we can rehab a property, get it on the marketplace, and sell it and get out. We're not in the long-term rental market.
Question? I heard Joe mention early on that we hadn't been tracking how many liens we have been issuing. At what point did we start to track that and maintain a database, Joe?
This year, we started that process probably in maybe June of this year. And through the help of some people here to my right, they actually went through the Cook County records and pulled all that information. So we now have a complete database, and anything that's newly recorded will be added to that, and that will continue to be updated.
Okay, so where we didn't have one prior, we now do have a database.
Correct.
That is current.
And it didn't cost anything to put that together, which is...
So thank you to your resources for that. Okay, and then I did hear you say, or that you alluded to, you've got some pre-work to do. Should we enter into an agreement with you? Could you maybe just dive into what that pre-work would be?
Pre-work, you mean in terms of the triage of the properties?
Well, I think I almost kind of felt like it might be even before we entered into the redevelopment agreement potentially?
So we've already done some base work, working closely with Joe to identify was there an opportunity. So we actually even went off and through the great work of Monica and Drew here, they went through and we pulled from even the county records to figure out what liens have been filed even before the mowing liens that you guys are working with Ida. We accounted for about 138 liens in total. Of those 138, I believe 37 of them are part of the mowing lien portfolio that you're already doing the mowing liens, attaching liens to. So I think the next step for us would be going into a redevelopment agreement, which is telling us what are the criteria and terms that you want to make sure that takes place in this process. And it sounds to me like the big push, which is right in line with what we want, is not to be developing a rental portfolio, is to really be focusing on the home ownership piece. And that's really our push. Now, as we all know, the 2008 crisis, be it 10 years ago, one of the biggest issues is, well, what if the property doesn't sell, right? So the only thing that we would put in there is we need a plan B, right? And I'm very upfront with that. We're not in the business of property management. We don't want to do that. However, if these properties don't sell, then we have to figure out some sort of exit mechanism so that way we can get that taken care of, whether it's a short period of time or long, whatever it is. But I'm all about being transparent on that, so that way you're aware that we would want something there to make sure after 8 months or a year, if it's not selling, you've got to do something with that asset.
That's why I was asking you, what is your percentage of home ownership versus rental units that you currently do right now?
All the properties that we've done have sold, right? So we have nothing we're holding in our portfolio that's being rented as we speak. Everything is sold, but being capitalists, we have to account for possible downturns and negatives and something that happens. And that's something I want to be very transparent. We're very transparent about. But our entire goal is 100% ownership.
So, question for you. So, I noticed that you said earlier that you guys want to do the portfolio in bulk, so that way it makes sense to you guys.
Correct.
About how many homes do you think would be considered in bulk for out here in Sauk Village?
So I believe that the entire portfolio of the mowing list that started, I think there was 178 properties that had mowing liens that were attached to it.
Right.
So of that 178, 37 overlapped, and there's another 101 additional liens that are quite old that are out there. And just to give you an idea, in order for us to make this work, in order to actually get the super priority status required a court process. So it's going to take us a little bit of time. We have to file the foreclosure actions on these liens, and then we have to get into the process and create new liens of receivership in that process. I know I'm being a lawyer right now, and probably, but the point is, it's going to extend the foreclosure timeline a little bit, solely because we need to reestablish that super priority status. Normally, what the city of Chicago does, or some of the bigger municipalities, because they've got the largest law firm in Chicago, but all the lawyers are relatively free, right? So they don't have to hire an outside firm. They actually file a lawsuit on the property and on the owners and the bank and everybody else, and bring them into court, and then they hit them with liens. So that gives them the proper notice. So one of the things that we discovered in the last meeting that we had with the city, we had a conference call with the city attorney, or the village attorney, thank you. We don't have that notice required that was initially done, because we were kind of trying to get the IDA funds and everything else. So that's going to extend the timeline a bit. But so in bulk, the total number is about 178, if I got that right?
So you're talking about, what, 40% of our overall vacant homes then?
Correct. We would do the rest, but we'd have to see if they have any liens, or maybe we can. And one of the things that we were doing, and we would continue to do, is to provide that legal support to the village, right? To how do we, so the next round of liens, or the next thing that we're going to do, the next thing that the village plans on doing, we can make sure that those have super priority right at the outset. So it cuts down the timelines and accelerates the process. But we would work closely with the village attorney and the village to help doing that. And so far, one of the things that we have done is I believe that we provided, just in trying to understand the portfolio, we provided the legal descriptions for all the liens that were filed for the mowing liens from the IDA reimbursement. We did not charge for that.
When it comes to the rehabbing the house, let's say you go further down the line and you're going to rehab the homes, how do you make sure that you're not selling a home and after you do the rehab that, say the homes is selling for $100,000 and we have homes that are next door that are selling for $25,000. I mean, that just, you know, you guys aren't going to make your money, and then doesn't kind of make sense. You're going to hold on to properties, which you don't want to do. So what are some things that you do to maybe cut down your costs so that way we aren't selling homes that don't make sense for the neighborhood?
It's a very good question, because that's a problem that you're going to have wherever you are in this space. So putting too much in a property, you may not get the value back. And that's where the triage I talked about at the outset was identifying of the properties which ones were most likely to have the highest value within the portfolio. We all know they're all going to have very little value as they stand, but are they in neighborhoods or communities? Are they close enough to communities that they could pull values based on the rehab? And then the rehab will be determined based on what we presume to be or what we calculate to be the after rehab value once we're complete. It makes absolutely no sense to spend $100,000 on a property that after you finish it is only going to worth $20,000. Yeah, we're not a public entity.
Anyone else have any questions?
So, thank you, Joe. One of the other things is, what we have found is as we develop particular properties in particular neighborhoods, we look at the surrounding neighborhoods and we cluster our projects. So there might be 3, 5, 6, 7, 8 properties all in one block or within a short radius of each other. So part of our triage and our targeting is clustering our rehabs. So if we develop one property, right, then if anybody's ever rehabbed property, you're praying to whoever it is to figure out, please can someone give me a valuation that makes me money on this property. From our perspective, when we cluster, we find that because we're doing 3 or 4 within a neighborhood, we're slowly bringing the values up to where they should be, right? And that they've been artificially depressed by the vacant, abandoned, zombie aspect of that neighborhood. So, yes, the initial values are extreme concern, but we found that when we cluster and we do projects together, we can slowly bring out those values and actually truly show what it is. Now, we can't go obviously overboard. And we're really looking at long-term growth as opposed to making a quick buck and moving on.
At the very beginning, you were talking about some type of an agreement, and you said you had to work it out first. What type of agreement that you would want us or whatever to partner with the village to be able to partner with you. So I'm sure there's something that you have, like you being lawyers, I know you have something that you're going to present. I don't see it right here, but is there something that you can give us so we can kind of look at and see what it is you're really asking?
Of course.
For us to partner with. I mean, as far as
We provided a sample of that agreement to the village attorney and to Joe. It was a sample off of kind of the framework that we used with the City of Chicago in terms of what the redevelopment requirements were. That agreement itself, I believe, has the affordability requirements. The question is going to be, what is the long-term goals and objectives of the village? So, and I could be mistaken, but my understanding is the issue of affordability wasn't at the top of the concern, and really the top of the concern is home ownership. Yeah. That's something that we would make sure that's within so essentially what your criteria or terms are is what we need to figure out what you want in the agreement. And of course, we'd have to say yes or no. Of course, it's going to be back and forth, but the framework is essentially the same. We take assignment of the liens, and you tell us it has to be done within a certain period of time, and what you want done. And obviously all the work that we're doing is compliant with, village codes and ordinances and everything else.
That is something that we really, really need to get these abandoned homes either back on the roll or take them down. But we need something because there's a lot of, I'm looking for home ownership, to tell you the truth. That right there gives people, people that actually rent can actually buy, but they don't know that. They haven't had that vehicle presented to them face to face, but a lot of times you can afford that kind of money, that it may be a little hitch in your whatever, but that's what we're looking for, someone that can actually turn a person that's renting into a person that's buying. And now you have a vested interest. So I'm just looking, that's one of the things I'm looking to see. And the way you explained it, it sounded like that's what you're trying to do. So if we can get something to kind of look at and see, and then quite naturally make sure you print the fine print bigger so we can see it.
It'll be on the back.
Okay. But yes, so you can bring us something, get us something tangible that we can, as a board, look at it and then have all the questions and everything. I'm sure we're going to meet at least one more time before we decide to go any further, so they can actually see what it is you're asking and asking the vote.
Absolutely.
Any other questions?
The reason why we wanted to kind of bring this before the board before we went to that next step is obviously there's costs that the village is going to incur with legal fees, having the attorney, go through that. But, we wanted to make sure that the board was comfortable enough to move forward with, this project and kind of, move this forward. So it's not, something we're standing still on. So that was the reason.
I mean, I'm pretty sure before we go into cost, we want to see what we're going into in writing.
So, I mean, and that we can get, put together the redevelopment agreement, that we can get put together through attorney. I just wanted to make sure that, before we went to that step, you guys knew this is what we were proposing on this. So.
Any other questions, anybody?
I have a question. What do you do about those components from residents who, after you sell the property, it's been redeveloped, and you find that you can't sell that property at that cost, and you have residents out here who's more than willing to buy? Is that a component in this particular?
Forgive me, I didn't understand the question.
Okay. What do you do when you have sold the property and you just can't sell it to anybody in the village? What do you do at that point when you have residents out there who's more than willing to buy at a lesser than market cost? Is that something that you guys would do, or you would just buy and say, well, we're going to reduce the price and sell the property to the resident? Or you're just going to let it sit there, after you rehab it and you can't get it anywhere, but you have a resident comes in and says, oh, well, I have this to pay. Or what we're going to do with the property?
Yeah, I think if I understand the question, the question is if the property is not selling,
Right.
then are we looking at reducing prices to get to the point where we can offload the property?
Right.
So that answer is, there's a couple answers to that question, and a couple pieces to the answer to that question. So first of all, we're going to try to be profitable in the sale of the property, right? So because the profits is what drives the rest of the acquisition and the rest of the development and offsets any other fees and costs down the road. So our first objective is to sell it at a price point that works within the marketplace at what we believe the market rate to be for the post-rehab value. And then once we've done that, if the property is just sitting out there, we're not in the business of just letting properties sit out there and not sell. Financially, it's from a pure cash flow perspective, it makes no sense, right? Because once we spent the money into it, it's spent. We can't get it back unless we sell it. So we've had properties, and that's why the bulk portfolio that we were talking about earlier, why it makes sense, is because there are going to be some properties that are going to have a nice profit because they're not that bad, they didn't need much rehab, or the value was there because it was right in the right neighborhood, at the right street, at the right address, whatever the case may be. Well, that's going to offset the ones like you were saying where, well, we put $125,000 into it, but we can't get more than $130,000. So what do? Dump it, sell it, get our cash out, move on to the next one, right? So if that was our business model, this would be the last village we'd be working in because we wouldn't survive the first 3 liens. But that's why the whole bulk piece looks in, because when we're now talking, when we approach our vendors and our suppliers and our material suppliers and our contractors, with everybody we're approaching, we're not approaching saying, hey, we're gonna do 1 rehab. We're talking about, we've got 150, we got 300. Now it changes the entire dynamic. When I buy 1 toilet, it's $99. When I buy 300 toilets, it's $40. So that changes the entire reflection. When we're buying a property from the bank wants to sell us an REO property for $40,000. Well, you gotta put $89,000 into it, but it just doesn't make sense anymore. But now our acquisition is what we've put into it, our sweat equity, our legal cost, which is already sunk. Our acquisition value now changes the entire tenor of the portfolio. So, coming all the way back around to, I think, answer your question, we're gonna sell the property at the most that we can make for it, and then lower the price the longer it sits out there in order to get it sold. But I don't want people sitting here going, there, the audience going, well, we're gonna wait 6 months because we know he's gonna drop the price on it, right? At the end of the day, in order to make this work, it has to work for everybody.
So you said you have 138 liens right now, did I hear that? 138 liens?
I believe there's 178 liens total that Sauk Village has. And 101 of those liens precede this IDA program that Sauk Village did for the mowing of the lawn.
You said it precedes the...
Precedes. So for example, you had a water bill or some other city service that was provided over the last 10 years that then a lien was formed and then recorded. Unfortunately, when we first approached, there wasn't a database of all these liens. So we went to the county recorder's office and pulled all those records in order to identify what liens were out there.
Okay. I heard you mention land bank too. Can you elaborate on that?
So the issue is, because there's zombie properties, no one's paid the taxes. And if this were a home rule village, you would have the home rule power to take title of the property and then wipe the taxes to 0 and then bring it back around, and we could acquire the property through a process, take title that way as well, in addition to the foreclosure. So because this is not home rule, we have a relationship and a partnership with the land bank, the Cook County, through the land bank once we finish the foreclosure process, and then they take care of the taxes. They clean the taxes, we pay an administrative fee for that, and then we take title from that perspective and move forward on the rehab.
Do we have any properties in the land bank right now?
There are a few, not many.
Was a few, not many.
Question. Are you working with anybody else in the south suburbs?
Sauk Village is our first one in the south suburbs. The majority of our work has been with the city of Chicago.
It's worth mentioning, I heard you say that you guys are responsible for the liens, so that won't be on us, right? Did I hear that right? Paying the liens, you'll be responsible for?
Responsible, once we've taken the assignment. Yeah, so right now, I don't know if they've all the liens have been recorded. So the liens have not been recorded. So from a legal, as a lawyer, there needs to be consideration, right? So part of the consideration is the redevelopment agreement, and the other part of it is the fact that we're going to take assignment of those liens before they're being recorded, and we pay for the recording of those liens.
Any more questions? Thank you guys very much. We will be getting back with you very soon.
Thank you very much for your time.
While they're getting their equipment out the way, 2019 dates and times of official meetings. You guys got the dates and the time. Are there any questions?
Yes.
Okay.
So, Madam Clerk, on the second page, under regular board meetings, seems like we have back-to-back board meetings on January 15th and 22nd. 15th and the 22nd.
Me?
So I'm not sure what's correct, what's not correct.
It should be reversed. Board meeting is on the 8th. Committee meeting is on the 15th. And another board meeting. So those two just needs to be switched up.
And then towards the bottom for the committee of the whole, that November, that 19th that's there, that's November, correct? Because it's a blank space. I want to make sure. I just wanted to make sure it was a blank space there. I just want to make sure that was November 19th. And yeah, I think there's another back-to-back. Okay. Yeah, but
So skip November.
no, I mean November's just a fill-in, but I think that the April 16th and April 23rd.
I'm still on November.
Okay.
So the only thing that's really needed is the word November.
Right, I think that's it for that. April 16th and April 23rd, back-to-back board meetings.
No, sorry, I was asking about July. Sorry, I was jumping around. I know, but I am, I'm sorry.
Okay, thank you. Let's go back to April. So, April 2nd is not listed because we went back to the election day.
Yeah, I don't think we were questioning that.
Okay. So then again, we just need to switch committee. Board meetings. The actual dates are right, we're just in wrong numbers.
Yeah, so I was jumping to July. Wasn't sure why we weren't having a committee meeting on July 2nd. It's Tuesday the 2nd.
Yes, that was because it was so close to July 4th, so that's why. But now that you get April straightened out, so the dates in April will be the 9th for the committee, the board meeting, and the 16th for committee meeting, and the 23rd for the board meeting. Is that correct?
So the
No,
ninth
for
for
board.
board, 16th
For
for
committee.
committee,
And 23rd for
23rd.
board. Okay. Any other questions? Comment?
I just have a comment. You know, once we pass this, I still think we should go down to 2 meetings a month. Because there's times we have nothing on our agenda, or we're scraping to get things on the agenda, or we don't have time to research. So I realize this has to be passed, but I think we might want to consider going down to 2 meetings a month.
Usually if we don't have anything on that meeting, I'll call or inform the clerk that we won't have a meeting if there's nothing, like we did this year. We didn't have something on a particular week, and I informed the clerk that it doesn't make sense to have a committee meeting. But we still need to have our board meeting twice a month, because we have to vote out accounts payable, unless you want to change that too. So, but the committee meetings, as we know, we discuss and then vote. So, but if there's nothing to discuss, to bring up to the board meeting, other than just the normal things that we have to pass, then that's when I was informed the clerk that we don't have a committee meeting at that time. Is there any other questions?
What about December 2nd? Is there like a, I'm sorry, 3rd? Should there be a committee meeting that day?
Let me answer
December 3rd.
that.
Okay.
The reason why it was decided that we would not have a committee meeting on the 3rd, because previous week, Thanksgiving, and so therefore, we would be hard pressed to get meeting materials and to get prepared, because there's a meeting on the 26th. I can't hear you. I'm sorry. Thank you. There is a meeting November 26th, but then the rest of that week, the building is closed for vacation. So therefore, there would be a great deal of unreadiness in terms of having a meeting planned and having your meeting packets for you. So that's why we forward December the 3rd.
And also, before we finalize the resolution, can we be sure to correct the address so that it's listed correctly?
Oh, okay. Fat fingers. I'll correct it.
In a year?
Or at the top?
I corrected
Is that
that.
what you're referring to?
Yes.
You at the top?
I'm still looking at the old one. Okay.
Okay, I'm sure we'll get a copy of these between now and when we're gonna vote on this, which will be next year, so we'll have.
January the 8th.
We'll have time to,
Dissect it
the
again.
board have time to look it over. Okay, next item. Captain Setterwick, do you want to come and explain the ordinance establishing implementation of a program to change the mitigation rates for the deployment of emergency and non-emergency services by the fire department for services provided rendered for the Sauk Village Fire Department? Basically, as everyone knows, the 1050 billing, and this is something that hasn't been updated in quite a while. I don't know when the last time it was actually updated, but this is something that the fire department feels that needs to be taken care of, and Captain Setterwick is going to explain. Is that working? Just let me pull it out. There you go.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Board of Trustees. As you stated, our rates for the 1050 billing, which is handled through fire recovery, they approached me about a month, 6 weeks ago, telling me that our rates are way below the national average. So we started looking into it. I contacted Trustee Todd, since she's in charge of ordinances, and her committee looked over the ordinance that was provided by fire recovery. I met with them. We went through some changes. I met with the finance director, and we established the rates that are in this ordinance now. We felt that these rates are fair and consistent with the national average. Currently, we receive a minimum of $350 every time we go out on an accident call, and we're able to collect money. As you see in this ordinance, the minimum rate would then jump to $500. So it's a substantial increase. We have been consistently receiving monies from fire recovery, about $1,000 a month, sometimes more, sometimes a little bit less. As the finance director has stated, our budget is not completely covered by the taxes that we receive. So in a sense, we are a burden on the village. So this increase would alleviate some of that burden. We were able to collect this year on an existing ordinance when there was a fire on Torrance Avenue. We were able to compile a bill, which we had sent to the owner, and through negotiations, we collected a substantial amount of money, which the finance director has dedicated to us. In my discussions with her, all the monies that she receives from fire recovery and any bills that the fire department puts out, she allocates directly to us, which I understand had not always been done in the past. So we do appreciate that. So we're asking to enact this ordinance, which covers the 1050 billing, and it also covers for services that we may provide out of the corporate limits of the village.
Any questions? Okay, Madam Clerk, would you have just put on the agenda for the next board meeting to be voted on this particular ordinance? Thank you, Chief.
Thank you. Thank you for your time. Have a Merry Christmas.
Okay, Captain, you too. Okay, our next item is an agreement with Linwood and Sauk Village about our detainees, and presenting that agreement will be our chief, Malcolm White, to explain to the board exactly what it entails. It's already here on paper, so if you have any questions or what, but he can explain to you the crux, nuts and bolts of it.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor.
Did you cut, is the mic cut back, is the mic cut off, is it green or red? Okay, push it until it turns green.
There we go. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, our village board. The agreement that you have before you is a result of my initial comprehensive study on where our expenses, as far as our operating expenses, where there have been deficiencies, where it has not been either effective or efficient. And so we took a long, hard look at that. The current practice is anytime anyone is taken into custody and they are not bondable, meaning they do not qualify for a bond. Normally it's a domestic where you cannot bond out, or some type of felony where you have to appear before a judge. In these cases, we have to pay overtime to either call an officer in or deplete our resources on the streets. When we did a cost analysis, we were averaging between 40 and 60 hours per pay period just watching prisoners. So that means that we're pulling people in, calling people in from home, through sitting and watching a TV screen to make sure we're in compliance with the state to ensure the safety of the prisoners. Of course, this was not efficient and at all concerning given our current budget. We contacted several other police departments to see what their remedies were for police departments who did not operate 24 hours to watch the prisoners. Some smaller agencies, such as Stager and South Chicago, they are in a similar situation as us. They allow Chicago Heights to watch the prisoners. And Chicago Heights charges them $100 per prisoner. That was on the level of the same direction we were headed in. We were already spending around that, if not more, per prisoner. When I reached out to and met with the chief and deputy chief of the Linwood Police Department, we discussed what the issues were. They currently have a 24-hour operation where they have clerks inside of their building 24 hours and they watch their own prisoners. Instead of the Chicago Heights rate of $100 per prisoner, they were gracious enough to offer us an agreement for $800 a month to cover all of our prisoners, allotted as long as their, of course, their cells are not full. If they have prisoners, then their prisoners will take precedence. However, their call volume is much lower than ours, and on a daily basis, their cells are much emptier than ours. So when you look at the analysis between the two, and see when you're spending that much money on every payroll compared to a flat rate of $800, I mean, it's kind of a no-brainer. And so we developed a plan and an agreement of how we will initiate this. We're trying to get it done as soon as possible. We're in the process of training our people. Once this is agreed upon by the village board.
Are there any questions?
Hey, Chief, so what happens when Linwood has one cell left? You take a Sauk Village person over there, and then someone gets a call, oh, I need that cell. They send them back to us? Is that how that's going to work?
Well, I mean, we also have cells as well. Push come to shove, if their lockup is full, we have to fall back on the current practice. The current practice, if it's on occasion, it's not crippling. But when it's the practice 24/7, 7 days a week for 365 days, that's where we're really taking a hit on our operating budget.
Also, I noticed that we have a $200 per incident fee if there's some kind of, biohazard situation there.
Yes.
I know you're fairly new. I'm not sure how this works. How often is that situation happening? Do you know, have you seen anything like that happening continuously since you've been chief over here, or even in your previous role?
Yeah, as a police officer in 25 years, for the last 25 years, you will on occasion get a prisoner that we normally, or if you look at their criminal history, the best term to describe it is they've been institutionalized, which means they've been in and out of the penitentiary the majority of their adult life. A lot of these people develop methods to frustrate the institution in which they're staying in an effort to get an I-bond so that they can get released sooner or so that they can get some type of relief to get out. So I don't know if you're familiar with Stateville or even Cook County, 26 in California. When prisoners are discontent, they do a lot of things to the cell, including shoving as much toilet paper down the toilet. They'll shove the whole blanket down the toilet and flush it and flush it and flush it till they flood the entire cell area. Just things that frustrate the staff. Prisoners do a lot of things. I mean, they will defecate on the floor purposely, just to frustrate the staff. They will throw feces and smear them. You know, to say it happens every day, no, it does not. However, anytime you have something like that happen, the most sanitary and sane thing to do is to order the service to come out and disinfect that entire area where that prisoner was. So I mean, that's very reasonable. I am familiar with the service that they use because they've used it before in the village of Hazel Crest.
And then one last question. So can you give us like an estimate on, you know, just rough, of how much you think we'll save every 2 weeks or a month, whatever you prefer, by going this route?
I don't want to misquote. The average officer's time and a half rate, you're looking at $45 an hour.
So, 45.
And so if the afternoon shift arrests someone at 8 o'clock, they don't go to court till 6 in the morning. So we have to have someone sitting in the station watching this guy from 8 p.m. till 6 in the morning when we transport him over to the court. Markham has a new procedure now where they're not taking people early. They have a series of buses at different times where a lot of these smaller departments are being stuck with these prisoners until it's time to go to court.
But I mean, even at your $45 an hour, it still sounds like a pretty reasonable deal for us to do this. I think I heard you earlier say like 40 hours, right? So
40 to 60 hours.
60.
So you got to figure on one prisoner, anywhere from 40, because the officer's time and a half. I'm talking about on the lower end. You know, you're talking about senior officers, they're up in the 50s.
Right.
So even at $50 an hour,
Yeah.
and it's a 4-hour job, you know, you're talking about $200 just for one prisoner,
Right.
where they're willing to charge us only $800 for the entire month.
Yeah.
And if you read my board report, just this last board meeting, we had 9 prisoners just in that 2-week period. And this is when it's cold. So during the summer months, we frequent more crimes, we make more arrests. So even in the slower times, we were averaging between 40 to 60 hours just watching prisoners every 3 period.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and just sorry, one more thing. And so, can you do us a favor and maybe like track how much we're saving by doing this, maybe over the course of a year, so that we can come back and say, hey, like this definitely worked for us, and we saved $10,000 over the course of a year by doing this.
The objective or my intentions were to track it for the rest of the fiscal year and then compare the same time period from the past fiscal year.
Great.
And keep in mind, this isn't like this is a quick fix and not necessarily an extensively long-term agreement. And the only reason I say that is we have to have 1, 3, 5-year plans. From what I see, the village has a very bright future. So of course, we between the next 3 to 5 years, we're hoping to become a 24-hour operation again, to put ourselves back in that position where, because again, they're just paying clerks at a clerk rate to be in the station.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why it's in our best interest to do a cost analysis after 6 months, and we might want to look at doing that ourselves because it might end up being, you know, a fair balance.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a question. Chief White, I noticed I don't know where I saw this at, that Denwood is going to provide us with a copy of the insurance.
No, we're going to provide them with a copy of our insurance.
Oh, okay. So is there additional cost? Or will it go up because we transporting or anything like that, or is it going to be the same thing?
No, anytime we go into an intergovernmental agreement or some type of, or use a facility, like for instance, if we wanted to use Bloom Trail High School to conduct our police testing, we would have to bring a certificate of insurance. It's the same thing as what you have in your car should you get pulled over by the police. It doesn't cost any extra for them to print it out.
Any other questions?
Can you terminate this at any time? I see you have it started as January 1st,
Yes.
2019. So what happens if you decide 6 months down the road, we don't want to do this?
We have to give both parties, either party can give 30-day notice that we'll discontinue at any time.
Was this in the, I was looking to see if it was in the agreement.
It is. It's should be in the second paragraph.
Okay. Thanks.
And so this is all already in place and is really more for our awareness then?
It's, oh, I'm sorry,
Go ahead.
go ahead. It currently is not in place. I didn't want to, you know, overstep my bounds. I did sign the agreement because I wanted to lock them in on that price, knowing that other places like Chicago Heights is charging $100 a prisoner. So, but it will not go into effect until we, number one, produce a certificate of insurance and then make that initial payment. However, we do have an agreement. They said if something comes up, like an emergency or something, that they would do it sooner.
That's what the resolution is for. You have to show them that too.
Yes.
Chief, comment?
What resolution, sorry?
Chief, comment, this is an excellent idea, and this, excuse me, and this will save money.
Yes.
This will save money, and it will keep your people on the street, and that's what we're trying to do. It's an excellent idea.
Thank you.
Yes.
Any other questions? Okay, this will be on the agenda for January, resolution. Thank you very much, Chief. Thank you for the explanation.
You know, one more thing, Keith, for Lee. So I know we're gonna work with landlords, but you know, during holiday season, something might have a few more people than we normally have. What, we'll just go back to the way we generally do, and keep those Sauk Village prisoners in Sauk Village. You know, it might be, you know, because of holidays, you got July coming up, the New Year's, you know, and people give a tendency to party a little bit too much on holidays, so we just revert back to Sauk Village.
Yeah, and I mean, here's the thing too. It's not like we're all islands. All these smaller police departments, we if it's on occasion, we've housed people at Chicago Heights. We've housed people just since I've been here. When we were doing a large scale investigation, and we had 8 people in custody. We housed some people at South Chicago Heights, a couple in Chicago Heights, and a couple in our cells. If it's on occasion, other towns don't mind. But when it's, you know, when it's on this level where we have to, on a daily basis, because we arrest people, we arrest people daily, okay? So, since it's so routine, we had to enter into an intergovernmental agreement because we're using someone else's resources.
That's good. I just wanted to know if we run out of space, what did we do then? So.
Yeah, then we make the call.
Yeah.
We call Creek, we call,
Oh, okay.
and we do it for them as well.
Oh,
So if they have too many prisoners, or if they're trying to, for whatever reason, separate the prisoners because of their investigations, we do it for other towns as well. Thank you again. Have a good evening.
Thank you. Okay, next item is public comment. All questions and comments will be directed to the mayor. Each speaker may comment on any matter pertaining to the business of Sauk Village. Each speaker is allowed one opportunity to speak for up to 3 minutes and may not engage in debate or counter discussions. And I will hear all comments and then I will respond at the end. Please state your name when you come up.
My name is Linda Washington, and I am here in Sauk Village at the Municipal Building for the Village Hall meeting on tonight to talk about the ordinance that Sauk Village have in regard to social media. I am also letting you know, because this is an Open Meetings Act, I have a right to videotape the meeting, so I am going Facebook Live. I personally have 4 pages with 5,000 people on my page, and they are all tuning in to this live recording. I have talked to you, Mayor Burgess, and I have talked to the board before about social media. We have an ordinance against employees being on social media. You all are not doing anything to stop it. I have given you information. I have given you handouts before, again, and today, showing you about these negative pages that people write about me. They named the Facebook page after my name, and they went on my Facebook page and on my friend list, and that's my friends to be their friends. And when they saw my name, they accepted that. So I'm having an issue with all of my friends and all of my family that don't know how to unfriend their page, reading over and over all of these derogatory negative things that's in front of you right now for like the 7th time that is being done with social media, and we have an ordinance against doing social media in Sauk Village. So I'm actually going Facebook Live right now to address it. I wrote a book, and on the front cover of this book is a picture of my mother, who was a well-known evangelist all over the city of Chicago. They put up this book with my mother and my grandmother's picture on it, and they're depicting and talking about us, and it's racial, and it's staff members that's associated to this village and your family, Mayor Burgess. I've talked to you about it before. As you know, FaceTime is just like being on channel 257 and 10 News. This is real time going out all over the internet right now. You put my book, you put my family, you put my pictures up, your staff that's going on, or that's disrespecting the ordinance, up on the internet, on social media, and talk about me, but you have rebuked anyone that talks about your family or talk about anybody that has anything to do with you, even stating you cannot stop them. So I want to go public and live on the internet all over the world right now, live, and let people know this is what we have to deal with in Sauk Village, with people that think it's funny, that think it's hilarious to talk about you and put your picture up on the internet. You put my picture up on the internet, now your picture's up on the internet for people to see what I have to deal with. We have an ordinance in this village, and the trustees are not doing nothing to stop it, so now it's just getting more and more out of control. And it's your fault, so whatever happened, know that it's on you. But to talk about my mother and my grandmother because you hate me just that bad, just because I'm running for office, you're pathetic, pathological, pathetic, habitual liars.
Judy Castier. Last week I talked about FOIAs, and I'm going to talk about them again this week. I've been on the phone excessive amount of time with the Attorney General's office talking to Steve Silverman, the Bureau Chief. I have put in FOIAs. I have received return mail asking me for additional time, only to get a FOIA that says the paperwork does not exist. I talked to a person that had FOIAs and was interested in mine. I did show them my FOIA and my answer. They took my FOIA and reworded it and sent it through as their own, only to get an answer to something that was said that there is no paperwork on that. How can there be paperwork for one and not for somebody else? It doesn't make sense to me. It doesn't make sense to Mr. Silverman. And I think that's one of the things that's going to cause some legal implications, because I'm not going to let it go. Electronically, paperwork has been sent to somebody with multiple pages, yet you tell me that you cannot electronically give me what I require. And yet, according to Mr. Silverman, according to a previous clerk, the doing that manually went out in the 70s and the early 80s. And it can be put out electronically, and yet I'm still not getting it. I also want to bring up the situation that if it's true, I have an issue with it, that our HR person is doing a lot of work from home. You can't get her hours in order in the village hall. How are you going to get them while she's working at home? She's working another job or something, but she needs to be at home? And if so, that doesn't make sense that she's working 10 hours a day on the police department plus the village and getting all that money from us. So I'd like to know exactly why would we have an employee that is allowed to work from home? I know outside people, bankers and people like that are working some of their days at home, but on a regular basis, I think that's a bad situation. And when the village is already uncomfortable with her and the hours she's putting in, having her at home is a dangerous situation.
Board, Mr. President, I've been here all day.
Please announce your name.
Larry Stewart. I just left the police chief. He might be new, but he's working toward making something here better. I hear that more than I've heard it in previous administration from someone new. I heard a presentation, a little lengthy, I think, repetitious, I think, but to the point was sure. They want to do something for Sauk Village. Whether this board understands it or not, the man stated, you all got a problem with housing. You know, it needed to be addressed, and still does. His outlook was to where I think it's right on. I'm just wondering about the costs, as I heard some addressed up there. You know, because nothing's free. Earlier today, I was here where Sauk Village hosted a meeting for the surrounding communities, Ford Heights, Chicago Heights. You know, I was really impressed. This is in Sauk Village, the town that's one step below Ford Heights. That's what they're saying in Ford Heights. You know, I saw the mayor of Ford Heights, I addressed her with it. You know, and it's because the town is divided. And this is what they're talking about in Ford Heights. You know, and this goes on and on. Municipality, different administration after administration, one side or another. Nobody wants this town to progress, it sounds like. I think the people up there do. They're a little divided, but they'll come together. You know, when they realize they might not even know what they're supposed to do. Come together. I sat out here this evening. I've been here since 1 o'clock. I'm tired of this. I've been here too many years before that. Make a difference. You all got the attention of these people, I hope. An election I hear is coming up. I hope it goes in favor of Sauk Village. Thank you.
Mary, yes, go ahead. I'm here again to talk about social media. As usual, I sat over there for a whole year and just listened to all your lies and didn't say anything. But then you all decided to attack me, so you made it personal. So I'm going to be up here every week talking about social media and how you're wrong. You are all given an ordinance, and none of you are doing anything about it. So you need to wake up, because you're a reflection of your employees. Obviously, you don't care. And you try to tell the residents what they can do, what they can't. I think you forgot that we put you there and that you work for us. We don't work for you. But again, I'll be up here every week talking about social media. And I know you're not going to do anything about it. Again, because like I said, I know you'll have hell to pay at home, but I really don't care. I will be up here every week talking about it so that the residents understand what is going on, and to warn the residents how you people work and how you do nasty stuff, writing nasty stuff on the internet and social media and mailings. Joe Wizawadi is good at that.
Very.
Thank you.
Okay, comments,
Excuse me,
as
Mr.
far,
Mayor, the young man over there, I think he wanted to say something, but I don't think he has it here. I'm not sure. I know he said make sure that he come up next week. So I yeah. Well, okay. So I'm just saying, I don't think he knows. I'm just.
you don't think he can hear?
I'm just saying, there's some kind of impairment going on. But he wants to speak.
That's what I was saying. Is anyone else have anything to say? Okay, as far as the FOIAs are concerned, if you were told that they needed additional time to answer the FOIAs, that's correct. It's just like we don't stop business in the village and try to answer the FOIAs right then and there. We have other things to take care of, but we do try to get them answered in a timely manner. And if they're not in a timely manner, we have to request that we ask for additional time. So that's something that is normal. If it's not able to be put in electronically form, as I stated before, we will give you the manual, we'll give you the paper. You still have your FOIA. So if it's not able to be done electronically, which I stated many times before, we don't have somebody sitting there waiting to scan and put it on a hard drive or put it on a thumb drive or send it. We have to collect all the information. It has to be collected to satisfy the FOIA. We have the paperwork, there it is, you have your FOIA. I don't understand that. As far as 10 hours a day, I don't know where that came from. No one here works 10 hours a day, unless they're working overtime. So negotiations do not go 10 hours a day. That's 10 hours a week. If you whoever told you or whatever you saw, it's the negotiations are for, she's paid 10 hours a week. And sometimes she's not here the whole time, so sometimes she has to work from home when she has to call somebody in the bargaining unit. Because if she was here, then she would get paid more hours, and that doesn't make sense to do that. So if she can't answer some of those things, but she submitted 10 hours a week. Anything over that, financially, I'll see it and I'll note it and I'll let anyone know, but so far, everything has been 10 hours a week. As I stated before, I don't answer social media questions. And that's why I don't answer social media questions. And as far as the comments on the housing, I appreciate those comments. And at this point, we will go with the trustees' general comments. I'll start with Trustee Todd.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to wish everyone a very Merry Christmas and a safe and Happy New Year. And that ends my comment.
Trustee Brewer?
My only comment is happy holidays. Make sure you eat enough turkey for everybody, and we'll see you next year. That's the end of my comment.
Trustee Tate? Trustee Carter?
My comment is enjoy your holiday and be safe with it.
Trustee Zupan?
Happy holidays, everybody. I hope you spend time with your families and enjoy that time with them. Happy New Year. We'll see you in 2019.
And just want to say similar, have a happy 2019, hope it's prosperous, and hope everybody have a good holiday.
And I do have one thing to bring up. I know it's been disseminated, it's been out there, publicized, but this Saturday, from 5 to 7, we will be giving our annual giveaway. The baskets will be distributed on the first come, first serve basis. And there will be different items in there, and all we ask is that you show that you have proof of residency in Sauk Village. But it'll be here, it'll be at the Senior Center, and our goal is to distribute 100 food baskets. And hope that, you don't necessarily have to, if you come out, still please come out if you'd like to. And not just to get a basket, just come out and try to have a good time. But we'll be here Saturday from 5 to 7 p.m. And for those that I won't see that time, have a safe and joyous Christmas. This is that time of year. And also look over what you've done for the whole year and thank God for that. That being said, I'll accept the motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Trustee Zupan, second by Trustee Carter. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried. Thank you very much.